everyone. My name is Katie O'Hara-Krebs, and I am the social media editor for Portal Libraries in the Academy. I am pleased today to welcome William Weare, Associate Dean for Academic Engagement and Public Services at Wichita State University Libraries, and Jaena Alabi, Research and Instruction Librarian at Auburn University. They're here to speak with us today about their article, What's Working and What Isn't, an exploratory study of reference models at large academic libraries. This article can be found on Portal's preprint site in volume 25, issue 4. The article is free to read, and viewers may access this article by navigating to the Johns Hopkins Press preprint site for Portal. So thank you both for joining us today. We're really excited to talk to you about this article. We'll just go ahead and start off. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about what the motivation or inspiration was behind this topic for you.
Thanks, Katie. William and I have worked together before, so we were at a point where I think we both wanted to get another publication together. We were trying to figure out what is it going to be about, though. And it happened to be right around the same time that my library had a big renovation where our reference desk was moved and rebranded. And we were kind of in that space of thinking about, how do we want to do this? Do we want to keep staffing with our graduate students? Do we want to have our librarians still? What do we want to do? So when William and I were talking, I was like, I have this problem. I really feel like the answer will be out there in the literature. So can we make something out of that? And then in the process, William and I started digging through the literature with our colleague, John, and we kind of found that a lot of the literature about reference desk staffing was really looking more at schools that had LIS programs. So you can kind of use that pool of student workers and give them work experience, and that feels like a win-win. My institution, Williams Institution at the time, didn't have a LIS program. So we're using graduate students, but they're different programs. They're not going to be librarians when they're done with that. So that was another sort of sticking point that we weren't really seeing our institutions reflected in those examples. And then some of the others that we're using, kind of student workers and undergrad student workers, tended to be more kind of smaller liberal arts colleges, which is, again, kind of a different environment than a larger public school, a state school. So we were really trying to answer that question, and we've realized relatively quickly, I guess, that was not already in the literature. And so we were like, well, what's the next thing that you do? Like, start talking to people. Let's find out what they're doing. And if we're going to have these conversations, let's go ahead and also get it in the literature too. Do you want to add anything, William?
That sounds great.
No, that is really intriguing, and it's a great reminder that the literature doesn't always turn up what we think it might. So yeah. So I wonder if you could just, for those people who haven't read the article yet, if you could give a little bit of a summary on the recent article in Portal.
Sure, I can do that. So I'll just say I'm a qualitative guy and not a quantitative guy, and they both have their places, and it's interesting when we're looking at how many or how often. But I like to know the answers to how and why, and I really enjoy talking with people and hearing explanations and motivations. And so as Jane brought up, we're trying to look at institutions that look like us. So our initial study group, we're looking at fairly large schools, and then we're trying to figure out how to narrow that down. And as she mentioned about LIS programs, and I've worked at schools where we have that pool of labor to work with, and they often do have in-library assignments and reference work and are on various teams. But neither of us had that, and lots of people at institutions don't have that luxury. And so we were looking at institutions about 20,000 students or more. And then we needed to narrow that down, or wanted to narrow that down. So we took out places that have a library school. And then I was at Texas A&M at the time, where John Fullerton is, and we Texas A&M and Auburn are both land
grant institutions.
Thinking of my terms this morning. So we ended up with a list of 28 of those that made our criteria. and then took out Texas A&M and took out Auburn. So that left us with 26. And then we had this interesting exercise of we wanted to reach out to heads of reference. But the world has changed, and a lot of institutions don't have a head of reference. Someone's in charge of it, but they may not even call it that. So we did a lot of poking around. And from some prior experience interviewing, looking for particular people, it's actually a really effective method rather than doing a blast. Is someone's going to get a personal email and invitation, and so your response rate is much better. So we did this kind of one at a time and shot these people emails who looked like they were in charge of reference. And in a couple, one anyway, they referred us to someone else. But we ended up with 15 folks who said yes. I will get ahead of myself and just tell you that 15 people interviewing between 40 and 60 minutes is if for anybody that's done this, is a lot of data. It's a lot of transcript. Yeah, live and learn. So we interviewed, we used Zoom, and at the point where we were doing this, we didn't have all this great transcription. So, you know, they were recorded and then we had to send them out to be, we used a different software to transcribe. And then we started analyzing this data. We had a set of questions, pretty basic. We wanted them to tell us what their model is at their institution and what's going on, what they're thinking about. And it's really great. I've been down this road before, and you're told don't ask any yes or no questions, but it doesn't really matter. You're talking to academic librarians and they'll talk at you. So it was really great because they gave us a lot of background. Some of them, 20 years of this is how we landed where we are. And the background turned out to be really helpful in understanding how they got to where they are today and how models change, how decisions are made, really, and what motivates those kind of changes. So yeah, we interviewed 15 and had sort of a multi-layer analysis of that. And I kept using, as we were working through this material, there was a lot and it was greatly varied. And I kept using the film editing analysis of a lot of great stuff ended up on the cutting room floor, because we were looking for the big patterns. So we ended up with really two big pieces of the article where the first is where we talked about models. And then models is kind of a complicated term because not everything is really a model. And as we were analyzing this, we realized that some of these we would rather call approaches because they're not necessarily a model, and nothing was clean about it at all. It's not like somebody uses one model. And we ended up really focusing on what happens Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because most people have another model after 5 and on the weekends, whether they call it that or even realize it. Something else happens at night. They know something else happens at night. So we looked at models, and then we really looked at what are those overarching themes. We had a lot of things to talk about. So we ended up with well, first of all, we ended up with 7 models and approaches, which we tried to define in the article. We looked for other people's definitions, but we were looking for definitions that worked for us. There are models out there that weren't part of our participants' responses. Then we ended up with these 3 broad themes that are really interrelated. So we were looking at the fact that libraries have moved to a combined desk model. And so these transactions are not necessarily happening at a traditional reference desk. And then there was the transition away from using librarians at that service point, whatever that service point might be, which is completely understandable. So like if you have a single service desk with circulation and maybe tech help and reference librarians do not want to check books in and out and issue user passes to community users and handle cache and so forth. So a real shift away from that, and a corresponding shift to using student employees, graduates and undergrads. But just because you're giving up traditional reference librarians doesn't mean students, because of course they might be using staff members. It might be totally a grad student driven desk. So we looked at those 3 big themes, and then we looked at, of course, stepping back, what are those big takeaways?
And that's a perfect segue into what are some of the takeaways that, or those big ideas from that you discovered that you would like Portal readers to get from this article?
I think one of the big things for me is just realizing that we're delving into the literature, we're talking to people with the goal of finding the answer. What is the thing that I should do at my institution? And so really sort of looking for a magic bullet, and that doesn't exist. So really, as William mentioned, it's messy. So there are these sort of ideal models of how things might work, but then you have to marry that to where you are and the specific context that you're in. So you may have pressures from your administration on librarians need to be doing more outreach, they need to be out of the building more, they need to be doing more service, more research. And so those are going to be things that affect your decision, right? Of whether they're going to be on the desk or how they're going to be contributing to that service. So I think really just, I think it's a great idea when we do look at the literature, we try to pull from others, but we always have to come back to the institution that we're at and what's going to work for us, for our patrons, for our librarians, for our staff, for our students. So I think that's one of the big takeaways for me.
I'd just like to follow up with this magic bullet thing because I was one of those people that wanted a magic bullet. I had worked previously at an institution where we had combined desks, and then when I got to Texas A&M, they had already combined these services largely at a single location. And there were good things about it, but there's just this feeling like somebody out there has figured this out. I mean, occasionally you get to read about these things where somebody's doing this fabulous thing, and well, maybe it's more than I was going to say 10 years ago. Maybe it's more than that. You know, everybody was talking about the knowledge market at Grand Valley and like what a cool model that was. And it's like, what should we be doing? You know, where's that thing? And one of the funnest parts of this was so many of our participants, either at the beginning of our talk or at the end, were like, so where are you going to report this? Or, you know, they were so excited that we were doing this. And so it was easy to see like, there are a lot of folks out there that are overseeing the service that wanted to know, well, what are you doing over there that's working for you? Yeah, so no magic bullet, and that piece about multiple things in place. Like there are a lot of things going on. And I found it interesting that when we would talk about models that our participants could name a model and they were aware that they were doing that, I'm not sure that all of them were aware of like the other three things that they're doing because we don't really, I don't know that I wasn't aware from my own institution what we were doing. It was, I'm too close to it or something, I'm not sure. But just the idea, like even if you have a traditional a traditional reference desk staffed by librarians, there is referral going on. Because someone comes up and asks a question and you can do the basic to get them started, but it's like, I want you to talk to the engineering librarian, or I want you to talk to the business librarian. So there's referral going on. After 5, there's referral going on. There's some help at the circ desk, but they're saying you need to get in touch with so-and-so. So there's referral. And even when you don't have an on-call model, sometimes you're in a place where you know, oh, this is chemistry or something, you know, and you know, she's in her office. Let me go see if she's free. So sometimes, you know, you're gonna go get someone. Sometimes it's a question that someone who's a functional specialist rather than a subject specialist is gonna answer. So that was, and of course, we're all doing chat. So, you know, essentially there's another model, and we're doing some pushing back and forth. And now, of course, there's lots more consultation. So we're setting up other appointments. And yeah, I just had no idea. I mean, I was too close to it to realize that we're all running in this big messy model, or most of us are, and not really thinking about that. Like we're not doing a sort of a one-shot thing. Related to the messiness, I would also, I didn't bring this up. I think Jaena did. Just the whole theory versus practice. Like we have this idea, like this is what we do, but this is what we really do. And they're not really, they're not necessarily the same. It's the reality of what we do day to day. And I'm a access services guy. And isn't that true in access services? Like the truth is, here's the policies that we have. and here's what we really do. So I didn't realize the extent to which that was true in reference.
I would also just add, not really take away from the article, but just one thing that really impressed me is how giving of their time and their expertise our participants were. I know in general, librarians are really, once you get us talking, we don't stop. And I love that about us and our profession. But we had so many people who responded, and they were not only willing, but eager and happy to participate in the discussion. And as William mentioned, a lot of people are like, tell me what you find out, because we're still looking for this too. So I really like that collaborative aspect of our profession for sure.
Well, I think that all of these things that have come up in your article that you've shared with me, plus those folks who have already read it, and if you haven't read it, I hope that everyone who's watched this interview goes and takes a look, because I do think it resonates. What this work and this research that you have done really resonates with librarians of all types, because we are doing more than that just one thing that we think we're doing. So I really, I also enjoyed reading your article. So thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. Just want to remind viewers that they can read the article for free on the Johns Hopkins Press preprint site for Portal. Thank you both again, and thank you out there in the world for watching this. Keep your eye out for future Portal author interviews. Have a great day.